Well, I think the impact of the bill is going to be pretty limited, to be perfectly honest. I think it's taken everyone in the industry and maybe in the broader commentariat slightly by surprise how narrowly they've defined who would actually be covered by this and the activities that would be covered by this. I haven't looked into it in huge detail yet, but my understanding is that they've really narrowed it down to people who are lobbying ministers and permanent secretaries, which is a remarkably narrow definition on a day-to-day basis. I don't think many consultants would actually be doing that. And, my experience in-house suggests that a lot of the time, if you're lobbying or going into meetings at that level, the outside advisor 9 times out of 10 probably isn't in the room, simply because it would be someone senior from that organisation taking on that activity. So it's a strange one, and I think the impact will be negligible, to be honest.
Well, we polled our members over the last couple of days and asked our existing public affairs registrants did they think they might be on this register, and only 20% of them think they might be on this. So as Pete said, this is going to be a very narrow register. Ironically enough, if media reports are correct, one of the few people caught might be Linton Crosby, but certainly there aren't going to be very many PRCA members on this register. And of course that does raise the question of the expense that's going to be incurred and how it will be spread amongst a very small number of people who are on this register. And that's an area of some concern, I think. I think the industry has to respond in a measured manner and need to convey a couple of messages. The first is we continue to argue for universality, that if you're going to have a register, it needs to cover everybody who lobbies, and this very narrow one clearly won't do that. But we also need to continue to point out that PRCA members have for over a decade voluntarily signed up to a register, to a code of conduct, abide by the highest ethical standards, and have nothing to fear from government action here. We just want to help the government to get it right. So our tone has to be disappointment, but being constructive and trying to help the government to highlight the mistakes it's made and to see if we can remedy some of them.
Yeah, I tend to agree with a lot of that. I think probably coming from the consultancy side of things, I think I'd be more inclined to embrace what appears to be baby steps in the right direction. For many years, right from when I was at DLA Piper, I've always advocated that statutory regulation is the only way forward. I think, we embraced that idea very early on in the debate. So I think anyone who currently signs up to the PRCA code or the APPC code who's in a consultancy has nothing to fear. I think it does become more difficult for in-house lobbyists to, what's the definition? I think one of the things that we really need to avoid is, as consultants within the PRCA membership, is I think the tone in some of the response over the last couple of months has been perhaps a little bit overly aggressive and critical of government, and perhaps sort of embracing some of these early changes on the consultancy side should be welcomed. I really think as well we should avoid falling into what could be a trap of appearing to be delighted or happy that so few people are covered by this. So, as if we can almost say, well, we embrace this because no one's really covered by it. And I'm not saying anyone is saying that yet, but I do perceive there to be potentially a bit of a trap out there in that.